What is going on, Clippers fans? Welcome to Clips and Dip. I am Chuck Mockler, joined as always by William Updike and Adam Osland. We are your pretty much daily Clippers podcast, bringing you fantastic post-game reports over from AM 570. Thanks to Adam Osland. Right now, the Clippers it doesn't feel very good right now, I don't think. We're going to talk about maybe Ty Lue's tinkering a little too much, some trade ideas, and then previewing this Clippers versus Mavs game where we can hopefully stop this just disheartening stretch of play from the Clippers. Adam, Will, you guys were on the radio last night. Adam, you were braving the passionate callers over on AM 570. How are you doing the day after that Hawks game?
Hey, Clipper Nation cares, okay? They really do, because there was a lot of passion last night and a lot of calls for some people to be fired over what happened and now losing six straight. And it is, it's perplexing, it's baffling, it's confounding. We never went into this season thinking there could be a point where they lose six straight ball games, longest losing streak for the Clippers since the 2017-2018 season. So we're talking obviously pre-213 connection, even before Blake Griffin was traded. I think it happened then. They had a 9-game losing streak, and I was on the air then, and that was rough too. There was more so just no calls
Sure,
on the 9-game losing streak. Yeah. Eventually people just gave up with that team. I don't think that's happening here because the expectations are still so high, and people do have faith they can turn it around. I certainly do, but it has been a brutal stretch the last 2 weeks, Will.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, this sixth game was just somehow the cherry on top that, like, it just absolutely I'm the lowest that I've been on this team all season. And we were talking before the podcast, but like for some reason, this one hurt me more than the 31-point loss to Denver. At least that was to Denver, a team that's in the top of the West. Like, we're losing to a middling team at the midway point of the season at home in a game Kawhi's playing 38 plus minutes. And I just it's really difficult for me to have a lot of faith in things getting much better, to be perfectly honest.
So, I think on one of our last tripods, I talked about how bad Atlanta has been defensively, and they were giving up everything to the Lakers, which they were, and they had lost 6 of 8 too, and I think they had lost 5 in a row, and they look like a team that would rather scrimmage itself and fight itself than an actual opposition out there, but they were good enough last night with Trae Young down the stretch.
Yeah, I think, Will, kind of to your point, that one of the things that was really frustrating about that Hawks game, and we're going to get into Ty Lue right now, is what we're going to talk about, because he talked about, maybe the 3-guard lineup was going away. That's clearly not happening. He still says he's going to
just that one permutation of it is going away. It just won't be Norm Wall Kennard. It's still going to be some other variation of 3 guards,
which is incredibly frustrating. The Clippers were at 500. We're a half game out of the 10th seed. Part of this is injuries, sure. Part of this is maybe Terrence Mann needing to play more. Ty Lue does say he has a plan. He said the team has a plan in place.
He better. Can I say, and to me, the most disheartening thing, this is what's most disheartening to me about the whole thing, is that this team is no closer to being put together than they were game 1. If anything, they've regressed. Yeah. If anything, they've regressed.
I don't think
they're a worse defense. They're still one of the worst offenses in the NBA. There has been no progress that is tangible in this team being a better team for the playoffs.
So you don't have faith that we're going to be able to manage the 4 point guards we have, because he said there's a plan in place when Luke comes back, but he also
we need to get rid of some of these guards.
But he also added that we're learning how to play with Terrence at the point guard position, which is yet another thing that Terrence is having to do, along with his many other jobs, which we're going to talk about.
That's positive. Great. Still no progress. We haven't figured out the lineups. We're halfway through the season. That's still no progress.
So since we're Adam, why do you think we are sticking with this 3-guard? Why is Ty sticking with this? I cannot explain why.
It's difficult. The unexplainable has been part of this Clippers season, with Rocco not playing minutes, and that's part of the reason why they're playing more guards. But I don't know if they view it as just, we have all these guards, We have to find ways to make everybody happy and to get everybody
Mhm.
involved out there. But now past the midway point, it just doesn't seem like something that needs to happen any longer. I I've wondered this and why they're going back to 3 guards and 4 guards at times. I mean, what
Plus
happened in that
Moses
second
Brown.
quarter
That was insane.
with 4 smalls and Moses Brown, if you count Terrence Mann as a small, somewhat is, but he's a tweener. He can play the 3, he can play the 2, he can play the 1, he can do a lot of things. But still, with him out there with John Wall and Reggie and Norman Powell and Moses Brown, a lot of people have said it, but you can make the argument that's where the game was lost right there. And
Yeah.
I wonder if they thought that they would be good enough to be able to experiment this much while still winning ball games because they'd have an identity and real concrete lineups and rotations that worked that they knew could win them games, and then they could try stuff like this here and there and see what would happen while still winning. And
Mhm.
that just hasn't happened, obviously. 6 straight, and they've lost a lot of games now with Kawhi. All of a sudden, they're 11-7 with Kawhi Leonard. I remember them when they
Right.
were 11-2. Uh, so to have a stretch like this where Kawhi's played, I want to say 15 of the last 18 games or 15 of the last 17 games,
Yeah.
and they're still playing like this and losing like this. And you can often point to some of these lineups and rotations that just aren't working over and over again. It's bizarre to me. It's like I still have faith in Coach Lou. I still have faith in the front office completely. I gotta believe that they have a bigger plan. We're just waiting to see it. And right now, it just feels like we're all in the dark and wondering, okay, they're hemorrhaging. They're a game up
Mhm.
of being out of not just the playoffs, the play in. At what point do you have that sense of urgency? And there was, okay, I know you're saying there's no progress. I will say Terrence Mann getting in the starting lineup was some progress because they
Sure.
made a hard decision of not playing Reggie Jackson in the second half. And that's the start of something different there, where they went away from the guards. But that quote came out post game, and it was, and I like what Lucas said about it. It's kind of open to interpretation because some people interpreted it as from Coach Lou saying they're no longer going to go with 3 guards. We're done with that. Andrew Greif was the one who asked the question from the LA Times, but he also said, quote, finding combinations that'll work. And it was hard to know if he's still talking about 3 guards there. It was a little bit convoluted of knowing exactly what he meant,
Mhm.
but you can at least say in the second half, there was a noticeable change from what we had seen before last night.
Yeah. And then I think one of the frustrating things too in that Atlanta game is he benched Terrence and he brought Norman, who was not playing well, and then the Hawks kind of pulled away and things like that. Do we think there was another quote he said where, Will, I want to kind of know what you think about this too, of like, it might not be Reggie's night last night, but it might be his night against another team. To me, that doesn't seem good. Like having these random nights where it's like, oh, now you step up. Now you step up because we're going to
I
call on you.
mean,
Because that's just less continuity than we even have now, or the same, I guess.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, part of the, identity of this team, which they can never seem to figure out, but like part of it has been this sort of like next man up mentality.
For
And I
sure.
do think there is something to with the depth that we have being able to, ride the hot hand when it's actually working. I guess the thing that is just becomes so frustrating is that it seems like we continue to try things when they're not working and
Totally.
even make adjustments that seem to go to counteract things that were working previously in game. So I think that's really hard. And I agree with Adam too that like this team definitely thought they had a lot more room for error. I thought they had a lot more room for error. I thought there were going
Totally.
to be wider margins for this team to figure out some of these problems, and it just hasn't happened.
And
Whether it's Kawhi or PG out, there's other guys. Morris has missed time. Batum being out was an absolute killer. That was a big
Yet
part of that
again,
losing
every
streak.
year.
Like
Yeah.
that was, that really hurts. So the margins just are not what they thought they were. A lot of teams got better. We talked about that. This Western Conference is looking a little bit better this year. There's some teams that you didn't expect that can stomp you on any given night. And so I do think like that harsh reality. I hope it's like a wake up call at 6 losses straight because yes, you still have 40 games left to play, right? It's by no means over. You even have time to work things out and figure things out. But like as Charles, you and I talk about all the time, like the runway continues to get shorter. and the less and less urgency you have to get up to speed to take off, the less likelihood you're gonna clear it. Like,
What I don't understand is, just because you have a lot of guards doesn't mean you have to reconfigure how you play basketball and how you run an offense. It could just be
Preach.
a flaw in the roster. It
Yes.
could just mean you have to make really tough decisions with sitting some guys or consolidating through a trade. And I know they've thought of these things, but it's just hard to rationalize all this when now we're in the second half of the season and still talking about it. And it's been a talking point on Twitter from Clipper Nation, really going back to November.
Yeah, since the
It's
first time we
just
saw it, people are like, "This is bad."
yeah,
I mean, to put it this
inexplicably.
way, like, you might have 3 different Clippers jerseys. Why would you try to wear all to the same game? It's just not necessary.
Well, the Clipper stripper did that fairly effectively. So we kind of talked like the benching thing, and this what I'm about to propose isn't based on scuttlebutt. It's not based on anything like that. It seems like from a locker room perspective that if you bench Reggie Jackson, you're going to have an easier time dealing with the ramifications of that than if you bench John Wall. It feels like maybe something, you know what I
Which
mean?
my
Like
reaction to that is then do the opposite. If the guy who
bench
is like
John Wall is what
willing
you're
to
saying.
take the room is like willing to take the step down and not like ripple the locker room, if that's the guy and the
Just
other guy
bench
is
him.
going to cause the problem, I'm saying bench the guy who has the problem, because that is like clearly not good. Like, that's just not the
Yeah.
guy that I want in this locker room. Period. And if it's not the guy I want in the locker room, it's not the guy I want on the floor.
That's a nice little quote from Coach Updike right there.
I can see that.
Yeah, I can see that on the wall, tapping that before the game. But I think that might be true, like because Reggie A is exhausted. He could just use like 2 weeks off, right?
I think that could be massive. Like, I think that even just like a week of rest, I mean, give him 5 games just to sort of get right and kind of get back. But I have a problem. I have a problem anytime coaches are unable to manage personalities, because that is such a part of the job, right? It's one of the things that, like, even
It's a
though I
lot
think
bigger part of a job than I think people. Adam, you talked about this, and I think people give coaches credit for. If you've
yeah,
ever
and
like
even like
managed
going
people, it's really hard.
Yeah, and like going back to Doc, I mean that would be my biggest frustration with Doc, even more so than like ignoring some of the analytic stuff, because I do think Doc does have a really good X and O's mind overall, but like he was never an effective personality manager.
Right.
You look at the Boston teams, you look at what happened with Lob City, you look at what happened, with this first iteration of 2-1-3. Like, it's such a huge thing, and I think if your team has lost 6 games straight, and you as the coach are too worried about like you can't control this locker room, if you bench somebody, then the problem is even way bigger than any of us think. Like that, I mean, that to me means it's unsalvageable.
And I don't think it's a little thing to sit Reggie Jackson, who had, when he
Totally.
was available, he had started the last 130 games for the Clippers.
Holy
I mean, when
shit!
he
Really?
has been there, yeah, when available, he had started the last 130
Wow.
games. He was in that position for a long time now. And, we know how valuable he's been to this team. We know how good he was in the playoffs during the 2021 run. He knows that too. And
Mm-hmm.
anybody like that's in that position has to have some pride and some confidence in their ability and wants to be out there. So him not playing in the second half, we'll see what comes of it. I do think he's a good team locker room guy. And
Totally.
obviously, I think he's someone that gets along with a lot of the guys on the team and seems like one of the jokesters and
He's a
a good
fan
locker room
favorite by
presence.
far.
Yeah, he is. And he talked about wanting to stay with this franchise. He'd retire if he didn't come back to this franchise. He'd sleep over outside the arena if they didn't sign him after 2021.
Help put up the crypto
And
sign that's off the stadium right now. If we asked him, I bet.
he has been one of, the bellwethers that has really picked up the slack when guys have been out so much the last 2 years. They've relied so much on Reggie Jackson. So I'm sure from his point of view, if it turns into something where Terrence Mann becomes the starter in the starting lineup, it's not going to be easy for him, understandably, because he's been relied upon so much. And maybe from his perspective, it's And this is the thanks I get. I have no idea. But just looking at it from the human nature point of view, like Reggie Jackson has been crucial. He's been a big part of this nucleus. And so I'm sure it's not an easy decision what happened yesterday against Atlanta. It's not going to be an easy decision moving forward. But this is what we're talking about when it comes to managing personalities and managing players out there. But that's what Coach Lou's job is. And I think he'll figure it out because he made tough choices in Cleveland too in his first year as a head coach midway through the season. So trial by fire, certainly with Coach Lou, it's been like this.
Some people have been talking about, other than the point guard rotation, which is a carousel at this point, given how many we have, a lot of people have been talking about maybe benching Marcus Morris until he can, I don't know, I guess get better or get right or something like that. He is shooting 38% from three, 44% overall. Obviously, there's some deficiencies on the defensive end in terms of movement and stuff like that. But if we're benching Reggie and we're benching, like Marcus Morris, we're effectively, kind of to Will's point, almost back at square one with a whole new starting lineup, right? We're going to, like Ty even talked about, we're trying to learn, to play with Terrence at the point guard position. So now we're truncating this, 60%, 40% new starting lineup into half a season to try and play championship level basketball, which seems really hard. So I'm not sure. I guess we just start at the guards, but what do you guys think about maybe benching Morris for Batum? I'm not even going to, I want Rocco to play, but I feel like we can't even entertain the idea of him playing meaningful minutes right now.
To me, it just depends. It's just going to depend on the minute load for Batum. And because his longevity is is key. If we don't have Batum going into a postseason, I think like that severely hurts that severely hurts us in any matchup. I can't think of a matchup in which Batum wouldn't be helpful.
Sure.
So that is definitely
he's one of the few guys that seems untradeable on this team.
Oh yeah,
they can't get by without Nicholas Batum and what he does.
No, and I mean his absence is felt all the time. So I'm definitely not opposed to him being back in the starting lineup. I mean, they've done it before. It certainly has worked, but it is a minutes thing. He's already missed some games. Got to be careful with that. My thing is, I guess if this is what has to happen for us to make progress, then fine.
Completely shake it up. Yeah.
Yeah, like that. I mean, that is great if you can get it to work. I still think 40 games is enough time to sort of like figure that out. Or at least how many games till All-Star break? At least 15 or so.
Something like that, yeah. With a lot of practice in between too, because remember the Clippers have the most spaced out second half of the season, which is good, I guess, for this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you get a chance to look at it, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just tough because it does feel like it does still feel like we're back at square one. Although, if that is what it takes, I mean, sometimes you do have to tear something down, I guess, to rebuild it. So if that is what it takes, then I'm for it.
I wonder if what's happened over the last week and a half, 2 weeks during the 6-game losing streak has made it easier to make these tough decisions because you have to now.
Yeah.
You have to now, and maybe some of the players will be more understanding to them
right.
because they see the record, because they see how bad things are going. How can you not? And maybe it just comes down to whether or not those guys are starting, Reggie and Marcus Morris. It's just less minutes overall.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And you get a better performance out of them because they're more energized, they're older players, and you're saving their legs. And you get other guys that deservedly can help, need minutes, want minutes, and can help you win with soaking up some of the minutes that are taken away from those two. It could happen that way. Or it just could be a monster trade and we don't see it coming.
Yeah. I mean, it could go either way. I mean, if we're sticking with like the guys that we have, assuming no changes, my thing has been, I don't really necessarily care who the starting five is, right? Like whatever. Like as long as if Kawhi and Paul George are out there, Zoo obviously has to be out there. Like you can give me any lineup, and I think I can agree to that. The difficulty is going to be finding these guys minutes in closing lineups, and hopefully, Ty can go with the flow of the game there, and somebody will have it going. I think an issue that we've had is, we'll have multiple guys who we kind of lean on offensively having bad games in the same game. and then just defensively not being able to provide much resistance. And the thing about the closing lineups too is like I feel like this Clippers team has not even been in a position to close out games. That they've had a couple of double-digit blowouts. Like it's just tough. Because I feel like figuring out the starting lineup is once again square one, and then we still have to figure out like what's going to work in like when it actually comes down to crunch time. And I don't know that we have enough of that yet either.
There is data that Law Murray put out there recently to support the fact that things aren't working with the starting lineup. Defensively, they have fallen off a cliff. Since November 26th, the starting lineup of Jackson George, Leonard Morris, and Vita Zubats, they're giving up 118.6 points per 100 possessions. That would mean whoever is they're going up against is basically turning into the best offense in the league during the time they're taking on the Clippers starting lineup that has Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Ivica Zubats in it. There's no way they should ever be that bad defensively.
Totally.
That same starting lineup or that same five a couple of years ago during the 2021 season was only giving up 102 points per 100 possessions. Those same five guys. How has it turned into 16 more points per 100 possessions just since November 26th? That is unbelievable.
So, I mean, I think one thing, and Adam, you and I talked about this a little bit last night, but I think that we see some like really positive and like encouraging defensive moves early. And then when guys like can't get it going offensively, I feel like there's a lack of concentration or a lack of whatever, because that same intensity is not there. And then teams really have a tendency to either run away with it or, quickly dissolve a lead if the Clippers are in that position. And I think that is like only compounded by the fact when you lose this many games in a row, right? Like there just has to be like a malaise. There's something that gets into your head on the defensive end of the floor. And that is the one thing that can keep us in games with this offense being the way that it is. So for, the starters to have fallen off a cliff that hard, I mean, it's not that difficult to see the Clippers losing a lot of games.
Yes.
And I don't think it's just the schedule has got better because Atlanta has not been good. And they gave up that second quarter where they give up 40 points. To me, it's almost like the saying of, it's all good till you go through a losing streak. Everybody buys in till you go through a losing streak, and then guys can splinter. Well, for a while, it felt like in the first half of the season, the first quarter of the season, I should say, they were playing defense regardless of the fact if they were making shots or not that night. They were locking in on that end, and that seems to have gone by the wayside, where it's dependent on how they're feeling and if they're feeling good out there because they're knocking down shots left and right. And that just can't happen. You can't have slippage because of that. And that's what seems to be happening right now. I don't know what else it could be because, I know the schedule is part of it, but not to this severe of a drop-off defensively. Something else is going on.
Yeah, Kawhi, and if it's something else, if it's locker room stuff, Kawhi kind of gave a Kawhi answer to, the locker room's fine, everyone's okay, like we're looking forward to this challenge of, this is what it's all about, right? Like digging yourself out of these holes. So we'll see how they respond. I mean, we're playing the Mavericks tomorrow. They won 8 out of 10. We're going to talk about that later on. It's not an easy matchup. Also, Paul George and Luke Kennard have been ruled out of that game. The injury report just came out, so no PG. He's got the hamstring soreness, and no Luke Kennard. He's got calf soreness. So the Clippers will be shorthanded against the Mavs. Adam has his head in his hands. He's shaking his head. That's never a good sign.
I don't understand. To me, this tells you that they were really trying to have a measuring stick moment against the Denver Nuggets Thursday night with Paul George ready to go in that game.
Ooh, and what? I don't know what we were measuring, but
obviously they failed.
Yeah.
But now he hasn't played the last two. He'll have missed the last 3 games since him giving it a go Thursday night in the first half against the Denver Nuggets. That's tough. And we talked about the hamstring a lot. And it's just very unpredictable. Of course, that plays into this as well. But yeah, if Luka Doncic is able to go and Paul George looks like won't be able to, that is going to be tough.
It will be difficult. We're going to preview that game in just a bit. Coming up, we're going to talk some trade scenarios because when you lose 6 games in a row, everyone thinks that maybe there should be a change. We got a couple of targets we're going to talk about, but we got some ads coming up. They can be a little loud sometimes. So if you're sensitive to ad levels, go ahead, turn it down. Talking trades. We got ads coming up in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into Clips and Dip, episode 71. I'm Adam Oslin. We had a good Clips and Double Dip last night with myself and William Updike in episode 70 if you want to check that out as well.
Mm-hmm.
We're on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We put out all those links. We are everywhere, even on iHeartRadio, I believe. Coming up, we will talk about the matchup against the Dallas Mavericks, who could be available. We just teased out some of that. But let's talk about trade scenarios, because would anyone be shocked at this point if the Clippers, made some big move? I'm not talking Kawhi or Paul George or Nicholas Batum, as we mentioned earlier, somebody like that. But it almost feels like everybody else could be on the table at this point when you're down like this and a game out of being out of the play-in tournament, or a game up of being out of the play-in tournament. Things are that dire right now. It looks like they're searching for answers.
I think if you can add, so let's talk the untouchables, right? I think Kawhi, PG, they're not going anywhere. I think the Clippers are pretty committed to them. I don't think Zubats is going anywhere. I don't know what.
Not at this trade deadline, no.
Yeah, he seems a little disgruntled, just in terms of defense and things like that. But I don't think Zoo's going anywhere. But I think you're right, Adam. Other than Batum on that list, everyone is up for trade. I know Luke Kennard is great. He's the best 3-point shooter in the league. But the Clippers might need to consolidate these guards, right? We got Reggie, we got Norm Powell, we got Luke Kennard, we got Terrence Mann now playing point guard. We have 5 guards on this team, counting John Wall and stuff like that. We might need to ship out 2 of these guys. I think. I mean, I don't know even what our guard value is, because they haven't been put in a position. No one's really been put in a position to raise their trade value this year. Even Rocco, who they don't really seemingly want on the team anymore, is just not playing. So who cares about his trade value, I guess. But Will, what do you think we do with our guards? Are we just committed to this 5 guards taking up roster spots?
I mean, my thing is just what upgrade are you really getting for any of these? I mean, Kennard, I guess, has a lot of value if he can continue to stay healthy. He's definitely shown enough through the last 2 seasons that he will still have value.
Oh, yeah.
But because everyone wants shooting, everyone could use shooting. But other than that, we have, don't get me wrong, none of these are bad players, but they are imperfect players. And I just don't see a team taking a handful of imperfect players for a player that helps this roster in terms of guards. Now, if you're attaching a wing, if you're attaching more value somewhere else, obviously that changes it. But no, I don't think we can bundle 2 or 3 of our 5 guards and get anything
to put us over the top in some way that people kind of want, basically.
I don't really think so. I mean, you could maybe take a swing on somebody. I still just, I don't know.
I mean, teams that are looking for more cap room this summer could see Reggie Jackson and his expiring as value there. Teams that have seen Amir Coffey enough would know that he's on a very team-friendly contract.
Yeah.
That's somebody. Marcus Morris still has a year after this left on his contract, but some teams could say we need more scoring. We need more of what he does in ISO. The Atlanta Hawks were one of those teams that was brought up, but even before the season started, because of how they've treated John Collins.
Every year for the Clippers.
Yeah, that's one of the guys. So a guard with a wing, a second-round pick or 2, maybe then, someone's picking up the phone and you're having a conversation at least.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as people want to get down on them for not making a move already, it could just not be there yet. It takes 2 to tango, and we're not that close to the trade deadline where some teams feel like, okay, the pressure's on. We got to make a move now. We got to get out of this contract or get away from this player to open up time for someone else. We're not quite there yet, as much as it seems like, for the Clippers' sake, a shakeup might be one of the top solutions, at least, for what they're going through right now.
Yeah, John Collins, I feel like the last 3 years have been, the John Collins trade years. Him and TJ McConnell are 2 people that Clippers fans talk about all the time wanting to trade for. I was messing around on the trade machine, which I never really do because it's infuriating and you can just kind of get dragged into the rabbit hole. Robert Covington for Nerlens Noel works straight up. I love Rocco. If he's not going to play, I want him to play, but let's get a backup center who's more than capable. And Nerlens Noel,
Yeah.
I don't know what the Pistons are doing. I don't know if I know Cade's hurt. I don't know if they're trying to just tank it and lose or something like that. But you know, trading for Nerlens Noel would be fantastic. We'd have an actual backup center. No disrespect to Moses Brown. It'd be someone who could play to take some time off some other wings. Like I would do that trade in a heartbeat, and I don't want to because I think we all thought Robert Covington would play basketball more for the Clippers in meaningful lineups and not be next to Brandon Boston Jr., where he can't get any rhythm or anything like that. But that's a trade that I would do in a second if that was available to the Clippers.
That's one of those things that makes this season, more confounding because we go into it and everybody's in the understanding that the Clippers have all these wings. We're calling it Wingstop. They are the modern NBA. They're going to have all this switchability. And if you're going to lose, if something's not going to work, I mean, wouldn't it be more prudent to at least go out with the plan you thought you had coming into the season? And maybe that's something they're saving for the long term. But at this point, if they have any tricks up their sleeves at 21 and 21, it's kind of time to start making those moves and seeing what's going to work. And everybody had the expectation of seeing a bunch of wings out there, even if it's 4 wings and Zubats.
Yeah,
I
love
think
it.
we'd all be fine with that. Just to not have seen any of those wings, it's so hard to understand. I got to think, they know this as well, but it's getting down to that time where you may have to give up some of your moves that you'd like to hold back for the postseason to try to get some wins now to make the postseason.
Totally. A quick note about the Pistons. They've won 11 games, so I don't think they might not do that Rocco trade because that might make them too good. They're the second worst team in the league right now, behind the Rockets, who have 10 wins. So maybe that trade wouldn't happen. Maybe we give them, I don't know, one of their second picks back or something like that. Will, what are you thinking? Do we need a backup big? Kyle Kuzma is someone people have talked about. Justin Russo made a good point about Kyle Kuzma, is that he's not necessarily the smartest basketball player.
Yeah.
He wants the hero moment a little bit, things like that. Kelly Olynyk is a guy who I put this out on @ClippersPod on our Twitter of like, who would you guys want to trade for? A lot of the people at the 213 Hoops Empire begrudgingly want to trade for Kelly Olynyk because of what he would bring to this team as a backup center. Like, where are you at? What's kind of one of your preferred targets right now?
I mean, backup center to me just makes sense because you need someone to back up Zoo. I think I'm seeing enough of like Moses Brown for this season. I think there's somebody out there that we can get for a relatively low investment if we can't sign somebody outright. So that to me makes a lot of sense. Yeah, like Kuzma or anything like that, that doesn't super move the needle for me.
Mm-hmm.
He's good. I guess the thing too is like, I mean, I'm of the mind like that a second center would be good for the regular season because we aren't winning, and like just anything that would help, anything that will service that goal would be good.
Yeah,
But even if like Nerlens Noel was to make like we did that trade straight up, like I don't know his utility necessarily in the playoffs for this team or how that
sure.
fits in. So I can definitely see people like clamoring more for another wing.
It's so weird, right? Because like, let's consolidate these wings and this player for a
I
wing, and it's
You
like
got to send some guards out. Basically, where I'm
yeah.
at right now is any guard, like any trade, has to send some guards out.
Mhm.
Even if we're not getting a more perfect guard back, like we just got to have less guards on the roster to give to so we can get out of the 3 guard lineups. Let's just be done. Let's not have enough guards to even play that. We'll have 2 guards on the team, and that'll be it.
Well, what's crazy about Moses Brown too, he's on a 2-way contract, and he has 29 appearances for the Clippers so far, which means he has, I believe, 21
21.
more before he just can't appear in an NBA game for the Clippers. Musa Diabate also on
Yeah.
a 2-way contract. Has a lot less than 29 appearances, so maybe we'll see more Musa late, but that also feels insane. But Adam, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say if you're dealing with the Pistons already for Nerlens Noel, who I've always really liked too. See if you can find a way to pry Bogdanovich away,
Bojan.
because somebody likely is going to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that would obviously mean Marcus Morris would likely be out.
The 2027 pick, they probably want some kind of draft compensation. We can't give them good players.
Yeah,
right?
2027 first rounder.
Draft compensation.
Maybe Amir, Brandon Boston, something like that to get Bogdanovich and try to save this season. Because right now, desperate times.
Well, and Brandon,
got to be honest.
Brandon Boston is a thing too, where it's like, for his career's sake, he should not be on the Clippers. For his development, for all of this stuff, he should not be on the Clippers. He seems like a great guy. We've seen what he can do. This is not a knock on him or anything like that. But
no, he's willing to learn and grow. Like he does so many things in a young player that I absolutely admire. But there is really no path for him to get consistent minutes on this team. And unless we drastically change the goals for what this franchise chooses to do next season, I don't really see that changing in the near future.
Yeah, and I would like to see Brandon Boston with an opportunity on a shittier NBA team, because it'd be fun to watch. Like, I'd love to watch someone out hero ball and stuff like that. But yeah, he can be included in any trade too, just for his sake, right? Like, I would be fine with parting with Brandon Boston. People talk about throwing Jason Preston into these trades. He is not worth anything on the trade market. He is not. He's like barely, you know what I mean? There's no body of work to judge it against, just from a pure like metric standpoint. And what you have seen is no team is like, oh, they got something there with the kid who looks like he shoots with both arms when he releases the ball. Like, it's just not. Preston is not
Sean Marion.
Yeah, Preston is not a trade asset in any way. Maybe for filler, I guess, if you need to chip in that extra $600,000 to make the trade work. I don't know. Maybe that's too harsh. I don't know.
Bojan is interesting. I think Bojan is interesting.
He would crush on this team. What is their asking price?
He just got an extension, right? And he's having a killer year. Even though teams focus in on trying to stop him, and I know they have only 11 to win, so I guess it works, but efficiency-wise, he's having a huge year. And just because he looks a little bit like Joe Ingles doesn't mean he can't be a Clipper.
Yeah. So he's
also 33 years old.
Damn, yeah. So, we're an old team, so it's just fine. At this point, I'm like, whatever. So he's at 19 mil this year, 20 mil the next year, and then 19 the year after that. Then he's an unrestricted free agent. Why did they sign him to this contract anyway?
Some of the gripes with the Clippers playing so slow, and I thought last night at times they obviously look slow, and they're still bottom 10 in pace and have been all season long. Mm-hmm. Some of that stuff to me is just remedied by getting into playoff basketball. Like, that will aid them because it's more half-court stuff, and it suits them well. There are usually less possessions, less up and down. It's not 7 seconds or less, and they could take advantage of that with an older team. But the problem is you've still got to survive this regular season right now, and they're not at the moment. Yeah. I had a call the other night. Somebody like, playoffs, like, what are we talking about? It's
Jim Morris.
They could be out of the playoffs right now. And that was when they had lost, I think, 4 in a row. Yeah. And we keep saying these games, this is rock bottom. No, this is rock bottom. This is rock bottom. They keep digging right now. They have to find a way to climb out of this hole.
They're going to find the core of the earth.
Yeah, we're going to dig straight up to the other side and pop out. On the other. Yeah, we're going to see the chud. We're going to see the mole man. So you mentioned, we're kind of digging this hole. There's 41 games left. At what, are we hoping we see some championship medal by game 65? That's only 24 games from here. You know what I mean? That's what's scary about it.
Something has to turn, I think, within the next 2 weeks, within the next week and a half to 2 weeks. And it could, because the talent is still there. It's just they are consistently inconsistent. We have to be honest about that all season long. You come into the season, you talk about having to take things step by step and not skip any steps, and you're building, and it's a process.
I'm ready to play hopscotch. Let's jump to square 8. I don't care about steps. Well, there's no steps.
What they have built are a lot of bad habits. with inconsistent intensity out there, quarter to quarter, possession to possession at times, and turnovers, especially at inopportune times. So they have built really bad habits midway through the season, and that stuff's hard to undo or deprogram when you've been doing it for this long so far. That's my biggest concern.
You know what's funny? Oh, go ahead, Will.
You know what we haven't talked about enough? Did this season's marketing slogan, did that really do them in? Maybe that was it.
It's done them in a couple years. We had streetlights over spotlights, which everyone rightfully made fun of.
But was give no quarters the curse that got the Clippers to 21-21?
So Robert Flom on Twitter, 213 Hoops Empire member, just talked about, him and LA Clippers film are going back and forth. We need to find a new Lou and Trez. That's the perfect regular season thing. Those kind of guys. You come in, you destroy bench units. Sure, you're maybe not going to get historically the most efficient.
How do we just not already have that? How do we not already have that?
I was going to say the same thing.
Just with the roster that we already have, with the guys that we already have, how are we not already doing that?
Norman Powell in December at times was better than that.
Sure.
He had a bad game last night, 3 of 13, had his shot blocked late. But he is one of those guys, at least. Hartenstein was Montrez last year, basically. He was that type of guy, but brought more energy on the defensive end, of course. They've never been able to replace that. To me, I don't think it's still crazy to call up Moussa Diabate.
Why not?
I still think
we're going to run out of Moses Brown appearances.
How
in 21
could it
games.
possibly hurt them if they're not going to go out and pick somebody else up? And we know Ivica Zubac has looked a little bit more worn down over the last month, and he had that knee injury.
Upset at some things that are happening on the court, I would say, too.
He went from giving up just about like 45% or 43% within 6 feet of the rim field goal percentage. It was the lowest in the league, to now he's at 54%. So, which tells you is, like, over the last month, it's probably been at about 65.
Sure. Yeah.
Because to shoot up like that quickly, he can't cover for everybody. He can't do everything out there, especially because midway point of the season, he's played heavy minutes. He's been so reliable, and he's gone through an injury. When he misses a game, that means something. It never happens.
Oh, man. Well, I would say.
I wonder if.
Oh, go ahead.
What about. We saw this happen with a Ty Lue coach team before. But remember the trade that they made to bring in Jordan Clarkson and Larry Nance midway through the season with the Cleveland Cavaliers and shake things up, to bring in a couple of guys there to try to do something with LeBron. I think that might have been his last year in Cleveland.
I mean,
maybe something like that happens, a shakeup like that. I don't know.
I mean,
we're searching for answers.
Yeah, it is. I will say it is January 9th when we're recording this. Keep an eye. The scuttlebutt that has been around is keep an eye on Mo Bamba. That's a guy who can be traded after January 15th. That's someone who apparently scuttlebutt says that there's been some kicking of the tires of over there. So, we got 6 days until some certain guys can be traded. And the Clippers will make their moves then, I guess. Maybe bring Hartenstein back, right? Why not?
We're not trying to be alarmist here, but 6 in a row.
I'm fine with being alarmist, right?
6 losses in a row. Well, I think things are severe. I think these are really desperate times for the Clippers, because when you're in danger of not just falling to the play-in, but falling out of it, and it's not just because they're playing all these great teams at once and just losing close battles. They've lost some really brutal games.
Yeah, we blew a lead.
And they've lost games. Yes, they should have won. And that has been a trend too, where they come back, but they come up short. That's been happening. I mean, they were up by 2 after being down 21 against Miami, and then lost that fourth quarter too. They've lost so many of these fourth quarters lately, or games that they easily could have won, sure. But the other side of that is, look, they're not figuring it out, and they're not progressing, as Will said earlier. They're not getting better. They're not showing much improvement so far this season. So it's crazy to be talking like this about this Clippers team, considering the talking points coming into this year and the expectations and everything. But this is where they're at. It is like they are starting over in some ways. It feels like, to Will's point.
And this is a lesson of the media. Stop picking us. If you don't pick us, we will play well. And when you pick us, we play poorly. That's how it goes. Hopefully we can break out of this funk against the Mavs. We're going to preview that game coming up after this ad break. Not sure how I feel about this game, but we're going to talk about it. We got ads coming up in a couple seconds. They're going to be breaking down this must-win. Every game at this point is must-win for the Clippers, I guess. Clippers versus Mavs preview coming up. We got ads hitting your ears in 3, 2, 1.
All right, so we're back in here on Clips and Dip, and we're talking about the Clippers taking on the Mavs. Got to avoid the dreaded 7th straight loss. I don't know if we already mentioned on this podcast, but according to StatMuse, no team has ever lost 7 or more in a row and got on to win an NBA championship. So Clippers up against possible history. Look, we lost by 2 to them in November without Kawhi. Pretty solid game. Mavs on a hot streak right now. They've won 8 of their last 10. It's unclear. Luka has I believe it's a right ankle soreness. He is listed as questionable currently for that game. Fellas, where do we start?
Man, I
want to start with how fraudulent that winning streak is for them.
Go into it.
Well, they beat the Rockets 3 times.
Hey, that helped
they
the
won
Clippers
7
out
in
when
a
they
row.
needed when they needed a couple of gimmies. God bless the Rockets is all I can say.
I know, but everybody said, yeah, but you guys beat the Rockets. And yeah, when the Lakers went on that winning streak, they beat the Spurs. Oh, Dallas also beat the Spurs during this winning streak. They beat the Lakers. I guess that, is considered a decent win right now. They're playing much better basketball.
Or whatever it is. So.
They beat the Knicks, and the Pelicans is a really good win. That was their last one. They lost to the Thunder 120-109 the other night. But the question is really, are they going to have Luka or not? Because that is really their entire team, and I don't think that can be overstated.
That is very true. We don't have PG and Luke. Do we think we run the same starters from the Hawks game? Do we see that Terrence, Kawhi, Batum, Morris, and Zoo? You think so?
I don't know. I kind of hope so. I'd like to see more of it. I thought Terrence Mann, to me, it makes sense. If you're a drive, kick, swing team, you bring in a guy like that gets into the paint, that can wreak havoc. I thought he had a nice assist to Ivica Zubac for a right-handed hook shot. I thought he had another one, a pass inside to Nicholas Batum, who may have thrown it down or had a layup early on in the game. But he gets into the teeth of the defense. He creates chaos and problems early for them. And if that's the Clippers' philosophy, and it has been the last couple of years, why not have a guy starting off the game doing that? And he rarely has any negative downside to his
Especially
game.
for what the Clippers need. Like, we just need more of everything he does, which is finish at the rim and, like you said, defend multiple positions. I get, Will, are you a little worried that having, like, I guess starting Terrence is nice because then you, like, Ty is then kind of forced to sit one of the guards theoretically because then your bench is packed with guard. I mean, I know we saw 4 guards plus Moses, but I don't think we'll see that again, right?
Tyler's just going to start doing hockey changes with just all guards. Sweep out whatever starting 5 you have, all guards.
Bring back Xavier Moon, get him in there,
No, I like the move of Terrence, and I feel like that it gives you an option with like a little bit less variation, if that makes sense. Like if you're just sticking to one guard, which I'm like putting in quotes for Terrence, but like if you're just sticking to one guard, then you can address sort of that area. Whereas like if you're running 2 to start, then there's like to me in my mind, there's a little bit higher of a variable as to like how that lineup, like how that sub rotation can work. And aside from that, I mean, like with Paul George out, I mean, Batum and Morris, I would like to have those guys staggered personally, unless it's a closing lineup.
Yeah, we're not playing Rocco.
Yeah, just to have one of the two on the bench to get us closer to that, like I mean, we call it like the Lou and Trez factor that the bench, the second unit needs as well, because like, man, though, like that first bench sub in, right, has been absolutely brutal for the Clippers. And like, they got to figure something out. So I like the idea of having, one of Batum or Morris available for those shifts. So yeah, Man, Kawhi, Batum, Morris, Zubats, it's a Band-Aid lineup to me. Like, this isn't like a long-term thing, but I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah. Adam, what do we need to do well against this Mavs team to break this losing streak that we have going on right now?
Play with better effort and intensity for 48 minutes. Put it all together. I said this the other night on Clippers Talk, but where the Clippers are positioned right now, and the reason we talk about this being so severe and so dire, it feels like they're down 2-0 and down 19 again on the road against the Dallas Mavericks. And that's where things really turned around for them. That's where they found themselves. That's where they were able to come back, win that series, do the same thing down 2-0 against the Utah Jazz, and show that resilient spirit that they have played with for the last couple of years. And I just haven't seen it enough consistently with this team. And I think it's just there's so many moving parts going on. I don't know how you develop any consistency with all the moving parts. A player who's played 40 games the last 3 years in John Wall, the injuries going on, the different guard lineups, Rocco not playing, Amir being in and out here and there, and Kawhi Leonard coming back after missing a season of basketball too. There's just been so much, and I didn't think it would take this long. I thought by this point of the season, the Clippers would really be hitting their stride come January. I thought, okay, January comes around 2023, they're going to win 10 of 12. They're going to win 15 of 20, something like that. And maybe they still will. I still have faith in this team because body of work wise, I trust the front office. I obviously trust Steve Ballmer to know when to delegate and know who to bring in basketball minds. And I trust Coach Lou because in the biggest moments, he's pushing the right buttons. So I don't know if that starts tomorrow night, but it seems like it needs to start within the next week and a half to 2 weeks, or else they're going to fall too far behind to where they're in the play-in tournament. And even if they are playing near a championship level heading into the playoffs, they could have already missed their chance because they were too low of a seed, and it's too much of an uphill battle. And, the path of least resistance is the path to the NBA championship, it seems sometimes. Of course.
Yeah. I mean,
most of the time.
You don't do yourself any favors if you got to play the 1 or 2 seed in the first round.
Yeah, it's God.
Just play with that heart again. Play with that heart and that hustle and that spirit.
Find a way to grit out a win.
I don't know how they
just find a way to actually provide some resistance and grit out a win. I even late in that Hawks game, sure there were some rotational things that could have been tightened up, that could have been better, but I didn't feel like they were really trying to gut out a win in that one, effort wise.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's hard.
Up 11, they had some really bad possessions.
And we made some very interesting substitutions on Ty Lue's part. It's hard to do.
There were 5 straight scoreless possessions. Okay, that is not Ty Lue. That is the guys on the floor.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
that's fair.
That needs to be better.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times, Kawhi got into the paint multiple times, and he played with a lot of pace in the second half, and that was really encouraging. Coach Lue talked about that post game, but there were multiple instances where he got a wide open 3 on a kick out to Nicholas Batum, missed it. Another open 3 to Norman Powell, far side corner, missed it. There was good process there. They ran their offense. They got open looks just like Marcus Morris did at the end of the game, and they just missed shots. But the problem is they probably shouldn't have never been in that position because they were up 11 with 6:45 left.
You can't blow that lead. It's hard to do game previews when you've lost 6 games in a row because you're just do everything better. Let's just do that. One thing that the Mavs do well is take free throws. They take the second most free throws per game. They don't hit them at a very good rate. They hit them 74% as a team. But these are still free point opportunities that we can't give to a team that is playing well, even if Luka's not there, which I have a feeling he's going to play because that's the Clippers' luck, right? I just don't want to see him at the free throw line. And we've actually been rebounding pretty well during this stretch. We're still rebounding the wall well. And the Mavs are dead last in total rebounds per game, offensive rebounding percentage, and they're middle of the road in defensive rebounding percentage. So, like we talked about grinding out a win, hitting the boards and getting offensive boards and things like that is how you get a kind of a gross win, because we're not a good team right now, and that's what you need.
That's an encouraging stat too. Like if
The board, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, what could go wrong in this game, Will? What do you think could go wrong?
We see the same defense the Clippers
4
showed
guards and a Moses Brown.
Yeah, in the second and fourth quarters. I mean, if they get hot from outside, I think that is going to spell disaster for us. In that loss, I think they lost to the Thunder, and I still think they shot like 36% as a team. The Mavericks did, which could spell disaster for the Clippers. Defending Hardaway Jr., I think that he'll have if he's featured more heavily, if it's like him and Dinwiddie get the start because Luka is out, I think that will really benefit having Terrence Mann in that starting lineup, giving them some less some smaller and less mobile guards to feast on. So that could really help, but those guys could cause a problem. Like they can play with pace and push things, which this team has not really been has not really been able to respond to that well. So yeah, a lot could go wrong. A lot could go wrong for the Clippers. I think that's all I can say. A lot can go wrong.
What could go wrong?
We talked about margin of error to start this podcast, and I feel like we're gonna wrap up on it again. The margins are very slim for the Clippers right now, and like Adam and I talked about this last night. I mean, no regular season game is a must-win game, but this is pretty damn close.
Yeah, it is. I'm now in every game is must-win territory.
This is pretty close.
Yeah, we're not.
Yeah. And coming back home and taking on a Hawks team that has all sorts of problems going on and losing that
the
game,
battle of the
that's
mids.
Devastating.
That's the battle of the mids, and we lost.
The mid-off?
You never want to be part of a mid-off, and you never want to lose a damn mid-off, for sure.
What could go wrong?
Yeah,
Luka could play and be out for blood because he thinks he can finish off the Clippers or something. You know what, though? A game against the Dallas Mavericks might be just what they need. I hope Luka plays. Maybe that's the wake-up call. This is a familiar foe that they saw in the playoffs twice, that they knew, just like I was talking about earlier, down 19, they had to come back against and find a way to beat them. Maybe that's what they need to see.
Yeah, just damn.
We're waiting for the wake-up call.
Yeah, when is it going to be?
Could that be it?
That's a good call. The Clippers have shot.
Sorry, this wasn't like game specific, but like with the team being at 500 right now, 5-game homestand, they've already lost 1. I mean, like, what's the best they could hope to get out of this homestand with record wise? Because could go wrong. Because that's something that could go wrong.
3-2, right? Like that's the best.
You think that's the best they can do?
Let me look at the schedule real quick. But we already lost to the Hawks.
Yeah,
we already lost to the Hawks.
Denver on
Friday. Rockets, I think we can get that one
It's
done.
a nooner, though.
God damn it.
Isn't it a nooner?
Yeah, it is. You're right.
Skyrockets in flight, afternoon delight.
And then 76ers versus Clippers on Tuesday. Oh, God. Yeah, I don't know. Is Embiid out?
We don't know if Embiid will be there for that one.
Well, Trez won't. That'll be Trez's best game of his career, probably.
I honestly think the next 2 opponents are the best opportunity to turn this season around. Like if you could line up a couple of teams for the Clippers to get right and figure it out and prove once again to themselves who they are, it's Dallas and the Denver Nuggets after the butt whooping they gave them last week. Coach Lou said it. We'll find out who we are when we take them on back at home next Friday.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's hope the Clippers shoot well. We've been shooting 34% from 3 and 44% from the floor during this losing streak, which is not going to get it done against a Mavs team that's putting up 116 points over the last 10 games. Now for a more fun segment, Will, Adam, who is your surprise performer of the night pick? Will, we will go to you.
I'm gonna go with Norm Powell. I don't even know if he's this much of a surprise, but I think after the game and the loss, I do think he's going to be rearing to go, and I would be very surprised if he had a game as bad as he had against the Hawks. So offensively, I hope to see him get it going. We've seen honestly some weird Powell games where he'll have like 12 in the first quarter and then be very quiet. I'm hoping to get a more sustained performance from Powell in this one. So yeah, Norm Powell. Let's do it, buddy. I was so excited for this trade. Let's have Norm Powell break this losing spell, and I think that'll be the first move towards getting this Clippers team back on track.
I'm gonna say Nicholas
Let's go.
Batum hits 3 or more 3-pointers.
He was 1 of
3
5
plus.
versus the Hawks. Oh yeah,
He had a rough
going
shooting
7
game.
for 7.
Maybe. Okay, we'll go 4+ 3-pointers against Dallas. I'm going to say for it to be a real surprise pick, he's got to hit 4 or more.
All right, that's fair. I am going to go with the most surprising of picks. You know him, you love him, Robert Covington. I'm just sticking with this until it happens, and he's going to play over 10 minutes. Hey, he was +1 in the game that we lost by 30 to the Nuggets, so maybe there's something to it. Are we picking the Clippers to win this game?
They have to.
Always.
They have to.
Two very different answers, but I respect both of them very much.
Give us something even more different.
I think that about wraps it up for this edition, the 71st episode of Clips and Dip. Adam, we're going to be double dipping no matter what happens after this Mavs game.
Yeah, me and you, we'll double dip afterwards. It'll be a late night one because the tip time's at 7:30.
I will be rearing to go no matter what happens. You and Will did a great job yesterday trying to make sense of that one. That was a tough one. Will, where can these fantastic listeners perhaps listen to or review us if they want to?
So if you want to rate and review the show, which we highly encourage you to do as it really helps us out, you can do that over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. You can listen to us on either one of those platforms. We're also on Google Podcasts. We're on Amazon. We're on Deezer. We're on Stitcher. iHeartRadio, as Adam mentioned to open this one. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can listen to this show. Be sure to follow us at ClippersPod on Twitter for all sorts of other content. Just extra stuff.
Just some fun stuff,
Yeah.
Yes, learn all about Adam's cryotherapy. If the Clippers lose 10 games in a row, this podcast is just going to be about cryotherapy after that. It's going to be cryotherapy. We're going to talk about movies we like. That's all we're going to talk about. Speaking of which, I went to see Babylon. A lot of stuff going on in that movie. We thank everybody for listening, and we will be back with y'all tomorrow. Let's go Clips.